Hello all. This is Ahron Wohlgelernter, and I'm here with my co-host, Rabbi Wohlgelernter, aka the Father, and this is Around the Shabbos Table, a podcast my father and I have created to bring you our thoughtful conversation and healthy arguments, so you can enjoy them now and bring them up at your Shabbos tables later. Don't be fooled by the name. Shabbos was not desecrated in any way, shape, or form in the production of the show. This podcast is part of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network, a growing network of the greatest Jewish podcast content trying to make Judaism more intentional. For those of you new here, go check it out at intentionaljew.com. And now, let's get around the Shabbos table. Okay, we have a really great episode today. We get to sit down with my mother, the mother, Rabbi Jeff herself, and we talk about a few concepts. One of them is that the greatest lessons sometimes are learned not through formal education and formal teaching. We talk about creating memories. We talk about also grandparenting and how to navigate, advice for parents on how to navigate this relationship and this partnership of raising the next generation. So I hope you enjoy. Yo, welcome everybody to the show. And welcome today. We have a very special guest, and that is my mother, the Rebbitzin Wogi. I know that grinds you, and that's why I call you that. I think this is like the first time you're ever being recorded in your whole life, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's familiar with you. Everybody knows you. You need no intro.
Okay, good. Can we just go in?
Yeah, but I want to talk about that for a minute. I want to talk about the fact that you hate being recorded, and you hate going live, and you hate being in the front of a room.
Okay, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I want you to tell me why you hate that.
That's a good question.
No, thank you. That's what I'm known for, my good questions. I'm a podcaster after all.
I just don't want what I say to be held against me anytime. So if I'm quiet, then you can assume that I'm really smart and wise and insightful. But once I start opening my mouth.
Okay, but I think there's a beautiful thing to that. I think that my Uncle Lewis once said that we usually have the teacher in the front or the guide by the side. I forgot the whole quip, but it was it's so important, this role of a mentor and a person who never really is in the front, never really is in the forefront, in the limelight. And I think that there's a lot of good that could be done by those people. Although I think that there's important for the position and for the person to take the position, the role and the name and the title. It's important, but I do think that some of the greatest impact you can have on people is when you don't have a position.
So it's never been a time when mommy hasn't spoken that hasn't been impactful, and it hasn't touched anybody who was listening to it, whether it's in a small class or whether mommy gives a speech at something. It's always like amazing. There are two reasons for that. One is because what comes out is so thought out and so beautiful that it really touches people tremendously. The other reason is that I really give two more reasons. One is that it's very respected. You respect the word, and that's you don't speak all the time. You don't just speak off the cuff. You don't just say things, so that when you do say something in public and you do say something to people, so then it really does have an impact because it's something that's precious. It's sort of been kept under wraps. And it's also not something that people take for granted. They know that it might not be coming again for who knows how long. And therefore they listen, they pay attention, they process. And listen, a Rav has to speak all the time. But it wouldn't be a bad idea. In the old days, a Rav only spoke twice a year. And people hung on to the words because it only came twice a year. Shabbos Shuvah, Shabbos HaGadol. So, the Rav speaks all the time. You're sort of like, yeah, I'll get him the next time. It's not really a big deal. But when you speak, again, besides the fact that what you say is like so stunning and so thought out, but it's also not taken for granted because it's not abused and overused.
That's nice. That's really sweet. Thanks.
But you yourself have experienced this, Mommy, because you have, you've been in the front of a room. You've been a formal teacher, both in younger grades and younger children and both older children. You see the impact that you have. let's put it into a question of where do you think you've had the greatest impact as an educator? Is it on your formal roles or is it in your non-formal roles?
Okay, good question again. But I think that when I taught, I loved teaching like fourth grade and under because they think you're still God then. And they're not rolling their eyes at you. They're kind of like looking and saying, oh, Morowogi said this and Morowogi said this. And they even imitate how you speak. And it's very confidence building, okay? And so then you take it really to heart, what you're going to say. I remember being really nervous about getting enough sleep because I wanted to make sure that I always answered the kids the right way, and I knew how important a teacher's role is. But what I didn't know was how important a dishwasher's role is, because like on Shabbos, when everybody came in to help, and years later they would say, oh, you changed my life. I'm like, what did I say? And they were like, yeah, when we were like cleaning off the table, you said blank a blank a blank. I'm like, I did? I said, that was smart, but I don't even remember what I said. But it was crazy, like crazy when somebody's mind and heart is open, what they can hear and what they can take. So I think it's more on the people that are helping me clean off the table than what I say. You know, I'll just say something, like something sweet about children, and they'll like, oh, like I brought up my children with that thought in my mind. I'm like, oh, wow. Like my kids just did something cute and I said something, but so I think it's also about the people and that they're ready to hear it more than what I say.
And it also speaks to the importance of finding someone, like for our listeners, the lesson here is not just how great my mother is, because I obviously believe that, and so does my father, and we don't want it to get to her head, I promise you. But I do think the importance of finding someone that you can hang out with, be it our podcast and listen to the conversations, or be it someone you feel is great, to find them and hang out with them, because you never know, as my mother said, that you'd be washing dishes with them and doing something mundane. Like one of my most impactful memories of my Rebbe is when we walked for 45 minutes to a bris, and it was his exercise, and we just walked, and I would say half of it was spent in silence, but the rest is how he crossed the street and how he dealt with people who were going too fast and how he dealt with anything. You learn so much, and it impacts so much. And that's what he says, that that's what the Chazal say, that Gadol Shimusho, that being Mishamish Torah and being able to be around it and really watch it and watch the Gadol, the person that you deem is a Gadol, then that's really the most important thing. So I think that's what we're speaking to here, is that's why that's a very impactful way. It's funny as the educator to think about that, but if you do, then you don't just stand in front of a classroom when you're an educator. You try to also have that relationship with your talmidim, with your students, that you can also impact them in that way and wash dishes with them.
Sometimes we think that if you're going to say something to a student, you're going to say something to a person who's growing in their Yiddishkeit, that you have to really think it out, and you really have
to prove to them Sinai,
and you really have to make sure you say the right thing. And the truth is, your Gadlus always was saying just what comes to your heart and from your heart, and that doesn't have to be so packaged. It needs to be filtered sometimes, but it doesn't need to be.
It depends what time of the day.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be packaged. The packaged stuff is good and it has an impact, but the unpackaged stuff that's coming from deep inside, and it's just a sensitive response to somebody. It's even just a well placed a reaction to something that can have a tremendous impact on people. And that's you never needed to be in the role of being a teacher, not besides the classroom, but I'm saying like a teacher of adults. You had so much to give on these kinds of interactions, the one-on-one interactions, and if people just hanging out with you, cooking with you, hanging with you, that kind of impact was something enormous.
Well, it's just come have fun with me. Come live my life with me. It's more fun.
Right. Which is another thing that I could speak to as well. That statement of just come and have fun with me is that you genuinely, again, what we're talking about, it's not a eulogy for you, although it sounds like it. It's more just understanding why it's an introduction, but also understanding why you were, so successful as a community leader and as a community leader. And I would say that the reason why you were successful as a community leader is because you took this role seriously of being able to impact people through these and have these, go to coffee with people. There's so many people who say that we got to have coffee with you. They didn't hear shiurim from you. They got to have coffee, but also that it's come and have fun with me. I value you. You can be my friend. And it's not that the leader says, I'm leading you, you're my sheep, but rather I'm leading you because you are my friend and we are together and we're doing this together and we're going to accomplish together. I think that also speaks to your success as a community leader.
Which is a perfect segue into what we wanted to talk about, grandparenting and really parenting, that it was so much about experiencing life with your children. There was a lot of parenting going on and a lot of instruction and a lot of, do this, don't do this, but it was really experiencing life with your children. And that's really, that opens up for you, Ahron, this whole discussion about grandparenting. It's really about experiencing with your grandchildren. And it's not so much about instruction, it's about experiencing. And I think, Mom, you should talk about that, address that, of this quality of being able to say to people, come experience with me. Now, you're not doing it to your grandchildren as friends, but you're experiencing life with them and letting them see life through your eyes and you're seeing it through their eyes. And what do you think that means as far as, what kind of impact do you think that has? And think of all of your grandchildren. What kind of impact do you think that has on grandchildren when you approach them that way?
Okay, let's take a break for a second. We'll get right back to this. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdown here in Israel, Pesach totally caught us off guard. We didn't know how we were going to do shopping because of the lockdown, and worse, there was a serious egg shortage in the country. So this year, in order not to spend those precious pre-Chag hours online at the supermarket waiting for 12 eggs, we're going to buy early, like now. I'm already stuffing my kids' pockets with eggs every time we go to the supermarket. This allows me to spend more time before Yom Tov, focusing on the essence of the holiday. The point is that Pesach is coming, and we have to take care of food prep so we can spend time preparing and focusing on the important parts of Yom Tov. Pesach Gourmet makes this possible. This year, they're offering incredible catering services for fresh delivery in Orlando and special FedEx deliveries to anywhere in the U.S. So if you want to enjoy time with your family and not compromise on the quality of food, then go check out PesachGourmet.com. I'll put the link in the show notes for an easy and awesome way to order food for Pesach. And for listeners of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network, Pesach Gourmet is offering $200 off your order when you use promo code IJPN200 at checkout. So again, prepare for Pesach. Order now at PesachGourmet.com and use promo code IJPN, that's all capitals, IJPN200 for $200 off your order. Now back to the show.
Is that a question?
It's a question.
Oh, it's a question? Okay. What question is that? I think that's more of a statement, that's what you want to do. You want to experience life show them through your eyes and learn about life through their eyes, because each one is so individual. That's why I think all of our children, they are all weirded out when I talk to one of their siblings when they're in the room. It's like, why are you talking to them? You're my mom. They all think that they are only children. I'm like, no, not really, because they're so individual. And I think that grandchildren are too. I remember somebody saying, wow, you have so many grandchildren. You know their names? I'm like, you know their names? What kind of question is that? I know their favorite colors. I know what they like to eat. I know what they like to do with me and what they like to do in their spare time. Like, what do you mean, do I know their names? Like that's just so weird. Like, that's so not important. Like, the person is more important. So the thing about grandchildren and children is that grandchildren don't roll their eyes. So you can say something, and I remember the first time I said something that was really important to me, and they listened and they just loved it and they asked questions about it. And I said, that is the nakuda of the difference of a parent and a grandparent. A grandparent, it's like a law. Like what you say, not because you're saying something right or wrong, but whatever you said is precious to them. And
Comes with a certain authority.
Right. And it's like, wow, they're not like rolling their eyes. They're not giggling. They think it's really important, And I think that you cannot underestimate that power of showing your grandchildren what life means to you, because they're really taking it seriously. So I love that. I love it.
Why do you think they take it more seriously than their parents? Because there's no discipline included?
It's just total love and total acceptance, total love. I know that boundaries is a really important thing when you're parents, but it does put a damper on it. It does put a damper on the fun, and this is just gorgeousness. I remember walking with my grandkids, with Yona's two boys, and we went walking every morning. They wouldn't miss a walk in the summer when they stayed with me and stayed with us, but you were in shul, okay? So they stayed with me, and Yona went to shul, and I would go on my walk with them, and they would not miss it, no matter how long the walk was. They would not miss it. And I remember sitting when we decided to come to Israel, and I told them, this is special because we're making memories, and nobody can ever take these away from us, these talks and these walks. But I said, when you come to visit me in Israel, and I know it will happen, we have to have hope, that when you come to visit me in Israel, we're going to be walking on history, and we'll be able to learn like about Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and we live in Modi'in, the Maccabees. We're going to be able to walk on history, and that will be really special. And they were like, with their mouths open, listening. I just loved it. I loved it. I don't know if a kid would do that. A grandkid would.
Right. And what do you end up, this is an interesting question. Well, I sort of want to break this up for a second here. I want to just open the reason why we're talking about this and why we're talking about grandchildren is because you guys are getting old, and you have old grandchildren and older grandchildren, having just experienced more additions to the family, and also milestones like Moshe's bar mitzvah, which is a milestone not just because of the bar mitzvah, but it's a milestone now that our family is growing up and we're all growing up. So I think that it's an important time to discuss this, but I also think that the benefit helps each generation, whereas it helps people who are grandparents understand what a responsibility and beautiful opportunity, better yet, that they have with their grandchildren. Helps the children to foster that relationship between their own children and their own parents, and it helps the grandparents appreciate their grandparents. So I think on each level, no matter where you are, I know that our listenership is very diverse in terms of ages, and we may have grandparents, we may have grandchildren, we may have children listening to this. And I think there's a musar, there's messages here for everyone. And I think that this point that you just said was beautiful, and I could even just break that into each one, is that children have to realize that the middle stage, the middle kid, myself, has to realize that there are things you try to teach your kids, but they're not always going to be receptive of them because there's also these important boundaries. So if you set them up with relationships outside of yourself, that you agree to and that you show them that you respect, namely your parents and your grandparents, then the children can pick up those messages through them as well. And also for grandchildren to realize that we need to spend time with our grandparents because there are things that we can get from them that we can't get from our own parents. So I think even just that one thing in terms of the messages is super important as well. And
the grandparent also has to know that they have an achrayus, because they're imparting messages very different than the way that they imparted them to their children. With their children, it came with discipline and with all of that we mentioned. But with the grandchild, as you said, it's just coming with your being. Like they're just totally open and receptive, and you have to recognize that that's an achrayus, because you can get a lot of things across to them, and you can get a lot of wrong things across to them also, and you have, without even saying words, just being. You listen to grandchildren. I've had the opportunity a lot to listen to grandchildren give hespedim for their grandparents, and 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and the ones that are most touching is when they talk about their grandparent. My grandparent was total acceptance, total love, and just embraced me and thought about me and cared about me, and that's. You can send that message to a child that they are valuable and important and wonderful without ever saying those words to them. And that's a tremendous achrayus, because you know that's really what they're looking for. Growing up at home is tough as a teenager, is whatever. There's it's got its own complications. But with a grandparent, it doesn't have to have any of those kind of things. And that's why it's a tremendous achrayus.
To build their confidence, just the fact that you believe in them, right, and that you're loving them, it builds their confidence. Now, we're not at the point of having older grandchildren yet, so that will be something to look forward to only. Right. I mean, I'm waiting for them. Some of those little girls are teenagers already, but we do not have any teenagers yet. Right. So that will be fun to see.
We have one.
13. You're right. You're right.
Well, and then there's an extra challenge here that you have to deal with, and I think that the tools that you use are beneficial as well, to speak out. That how do you foster that relationship if you're not able to take walks and you're not able to be with them in front of them, and maybe you have to do this over voice messages or video calls and whatnot. But what do you personally do in order to foster that relationship with your grandchildren who live across the world? How do you give them this message? Again, because it's about the message, and it's not about necessarily spending time, but time is the way you get those messages across. So what do you do practically to...
Right. So I think that we are really blessed that we live in the time that we don't have to talk on the phone, that we can actually see each other on the phone. And I think that that's really important, that when I'm talking to them, I'm just talking to them and having a conversation with them, and that they can see me, because it's really hard for kids to have a conversation just on a phone instead of seeing somebody and seeing that the focus is completely on them. So I love doing that. I love, if my kids are listening, I love doing my Sunday calls to everybody, because that's when they have a little bit more time. And just being able to do that right now is what I really appreciate. I want to get away from the grandparent, what are they going to get me for my birthday kind of
Do you do that by not buying presents? Is that where you're going to go? I just need to know.
Okay.
We have a few coming up. I need to know.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it's not something that they are going to say, oh, they're going to get me something really big or anything. Like
cashing in on their grandparents, which is when you have grandparents who are maybe not always part of your life, and the way that they create and foster that relationship is through those gifts. I think, well, we could open that up as well. What you think about spoiling your grandchildren?
I think there's spoiling with attention. So when you create the times that you're together and he'll buy them stuff. Zadie's always going to buy them stuff, and they look forward to that. They're the little gifts that you give them, like they look forward to that, the Shabbos gifts and everything. But I think it's focusing on the kids and making sure you're having conversations with them and talking with them. I think that's priceless, and that's really important. And I hope that they appreciate that, and I think they do. But I never want the relationship to be because they're going to get something.
Right. And I don't know how consciously we did it, but it was definitely in our minds, and therefore became sort of the modus operandi. That's what we do. We buy things, whatever, but it's not based around the things you're going to get from Bubby and Zadie. I think that if you ask the kids, I think they're too young to articulate yet, but I think if you ask the kids, what do they love about Bubby and Zadie? What's special to them about Bubby and Zadie? It's the time and the attention that they get really from Bubby. But and I find my way to do it. But it's, I think, the attention and the love that they get, and that, we talk about nursing a child, and we say that when you nurse a child, you give much more to the child than just the nourishment. It's the whole, the love that comes through, the concern, the bond between the mother and the child, the security, all the things that come with it. And I think that that's the same thing that comes through with a grandparent. There's so many messages and so many things, beautiful things that come through to the grandchild that don't come in the words, just come from the love and from the connection. And you can impart that on the WhatsApp and whatever, on the video things. And like Mommy said, we're blessed that we have that opportunity now. We remember when we were kids, how do we connect?
Say hi to Grandma. Say hi to the aunt. Say hi to this, and you were like, no.
And if a kid was 3 or 4, they were like, right. No, what you calling the telephone Bubby now? Like, what is that? And they had no interest in it. So remember, there was a tkufa where we used to take videos, VH8 or whatever. The video, we had a video camera, and we take videos, and then you would send a tape, a videotape.
I never remember us having. I remember Hilda having videotapes of us. Right. I don't remember us ever having videos of us.
We had for a small period of time. Harvey gave me something. We had it for a small period of time. I remember it was this huge big thing. You look like a movie director with it, but that was the only way, and it wasn't valuable at all. This way you can maintain a relationship. You can't build one, you can maintain one, and the Yom Tovim and the times together, when they're spent quality, which is really just hanging and just letting them experience. So then that's how you can then maintain it through the other things.
I agree. Also that, right? I think that constant contact is important, but needs its boundaries with grandparents. But the ideal is where you can maintain throughout the year and have intervals of contact, and be it birthdays and be it whatever it may be. Those are super important that you have those constantly.
Right. So I've started learning with grandchildren, and then I find that's an important.
That's meaningful for you as well. Meaning not just what you're imparting for them, but you're finding it's part of like your avoda. It has a meaningful place.
With kids, so that's just learning with kids. I'm saying I love that kind of learning, but I know that for them it's making an impact. Whether they're rolling their eyes a little bit and having to give up time from their day to learn, but in the end, in the deep end, they know that this is really valuable. And I'm sitting with my Zadie. Who taught you for your bar mitzvah? My Zadie taught me for my mitzvah. I mean, these are important things. And to me, the messages of a grandparent are different than the messages of a parent, because that doesn't have to come with any really deep instruction. There are no, like you said, there's no badges. It's just, this is the message. This is who we are. I think
also, as children, we have to be careful that we don't burden the grandparent with the structure and with creating that structure, that we allow and we enable the grandparent to just quote unquote spoil them with attention and be there for them for those important times. Because then if we switch it, I was reading some articles and they said that one of the advantages of grandparents is that they provide affordable child care. And I actually disagreed with that on the basis of this, is that once they're childcare, they're not grandparents anymore. Because then you can't go on the couch with food, and then you can't, meaning and you can't do this, and you have to go to sleep now, and then and there's yeses and nos, and it becomes too complicated to maintain that relationship. Now you're a caregiver.
It just has to be a fun place.
It has to be a fun place, and that's something
And we're just learning that now because we have never been in the same city as our children and bringing up grandchildren together, and we're so amazingly grateful that we're doing it with you and Adel, because you give us the opportunity to really be able to do this.
Well, as children, that's what we try to do. That's what we're trying to embody this, that where we don't burden you with that responsibility, but yet we give you, it's even apparent in the way we defer to you, ask Zadie a question, ask Bubby the question, because I can say the same message, but I just yelled at you for pishing on the porch, or wherever. It's there's a different relationship here, and so that same question, which I've acknowledged is a good question, and now you should ask Zadie, so then we can accomplish so much together.
So, Mommy, this is a question for you. When do you think that there is conflict between parent and grandparent over what's being given to the child? Where is there room for conflict, and how can we? Right. So I think it's important to talk about that.
Right, it's not always as rosy and beautiful as we're painting it.
I think that it's really one big word, and it's respect. If a child respects the grandparents of what they can give, and the grandparent is respecting and trusting their children and their children-in-law to bring up their grandchildren, then we look at the kids and we say we respect their laws. And
as crazy as they may be. Right. Which we're not. No, we're not. Yeah, we're not crazy enough.
So I think that it's called respect and saying they have their way of doing it. I trust them. I trust you. And I think where you get into quibbles is when there's a feeling of distrust on either side, right? Maybe, I have a good way of handling this situation and meddling in on that. I think that has to be a no-no, right? You have to say, I trust you with my grandchildren and with your children. You are doing a great job. And also I really appreciate that when they come to my house, it's my laws and my boundaries, and that's called respect on both places. And trust. I trust that you're doing a good job. I have confidence in you.
Who are your grandchildren? Are they your extensions of your children?
I was just about to ask that. Do you see your children in your grandchildren? But you can ask it as you wish. But yeah, that was on the top of my head as well.
It just makes you so connected to them when you do that. Like when I see their eyeballs and looking back at me, and it's my son or it's my daughter-in-law, and their smile, like I can see their love for music. It comes not from our side, it comes from, somebody else's side. I think it just endears them to me because they're part of us. And I think that it makes them so dear to us, not that they are us, but they're connected to us.
Right. So beautiful answer. For me, I'm going to say something that you guys have heard me say a lot of times, but I'll get there in a second. But for me, general mishpacha to me, the whole concept of mishpacha is that we're all bound and connected to each other. We have a common name, we have common grandparents, we have common relatives. There's an automatic tie. When I look at my grandchildren, and with every grandchild that's born, it's our family. The entity called our family is growing. And our family is made up of now Kenai Nahara, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and children. And all of that that's one. It's one unit. It's one entity. So when I look at my grandchildren, it's not necessarily extensions of my children. It's another type of child. There's a child that's called a child, and there's a child that's called a grandchild, and God willing, we'll see at some point great-grandchildren. But these are all part of our children. So like when I would go to a simcha, when I look at myself in the future, and we go to a simcha of let's say a great-grandchild getting married. So then I'm not that grandparent that's going to watch their grandchild get married. It's our family. There's a chassan in our family. There's a simcha in our family. When we experienced the bar mitzvah already. So that bar mitzvah wasn't my son making a bar mitzvah for his son. That was our family making a bar mitzvah, and it was my bar mitzvah. It was my simcha. It was my son's simcha, and we found our place. It's their simcha. I mean, they're the parents, but it's our family's simcha. And I always, whenever you talk about grandparents, you always have to go back to the thing that I always say.
Anikel.
Yeah.
I got it.
that we use, the word that we use in Yiddish for grandparent is anikel. And it's David Cohen told me that it's not a Yiddish word. It's actually a Hebrew word. And it comes from the sneh. That when the sneh was burning, it says that the sneh was on fire, but einenu ukal. Einenu ukal means that it wasn't being consumed. And when you have a grandchild, so then einenu ukal. That's when you have a second generation that you put into this world. That's when you're going to be here forever. It's eternal. Because that with a child, it could be the end of the line. With a grandchild, so then the chances are raised. And it's einenu ukal, and that's how you get longevity. And when you realize that, this child is part of our mishpacha, so then there are important things that I wanted to understand. I don't want to lecture it. I don't want to sit there and expound to it, which I didn't want to do to my children either. But I wanted them to pick that up of who we are, what our family is, what we represent, what we stand for, what our values are. So that's the way I look at my grandchildren. That's why I see my role as a grandparent is not necessarily as a teacher. I happen to be able to do that, so I'm happy to do that. But it's not a teacher per se. It's really someone who is there to set a tone for them, to take all the messages that my children are giving them with instruction and with all that stuff, and to take that and sort of make it real. It's like Sefer Bereshis to the rest of the Torah. The rest of the Torah is the mitzvahs. You got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. Sefer Bereshis is, and this is how you do it. This is what it looks like. This is what Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamecha looks like. This is what Avos Hashem looks like. This is what Ava of other people looks like. And that's why I see that our role is as grandparents. And it's very funny. I'm talking as if I'm the grandparent. You're the grandparent, and I'm the nachschlepper. But it's so I'm looking at you and the way you do it, and using that as the description of what should be done.
Right. I just love also the fact that grandparents with their grandchildren, I love making opportunities for older people to be with younger people, to mix the generations, to show them that there's no generation gap when it comes to love and when it comes to life and all sorts of things. We don't have to get technical. I don't have to, play around with technical things that I don't understand, but I love making those opportunities, and I tried a lot when I was a Rebbitzin to get older people together with younger people and mix that, because we have so much to learn from each other. Like the older people can stay young, being able to talk with the younger ones and stay energetic and love of life and everything else. And the young ones can get what they can get from the older ones. So I love mixing the two together as many times as I can, and in a relaxed atmosphere. So nobody's scared of each other. Because sometimes, older people can be scary. And sometimes younger kids can be scary to older people because they make a lot of noise and they make a lot of mess and they, whatever. And they have a lot of energy. But I love when they can get together and enjoy each other. I think there's a lot of good stuff in that.
Right. And that for me as well, that connection. So I took out a quote. I was reading this thing from, can't go podcast without quoting from Jordan Peterson, but he said, he was writing about his mother, and he spoke about just one little thing. He said that mom and dad both got to know our kids very well because of that. And I firmly believe that such intergenerational connection is vital. How else do you learn to travel through life when you're young? And I think that that's such an important point, that your parents are your guides, but now you have this greater compass, this bigger compass, like where you're going, where you can go. I also feel that my parents, when I was growing up, when I got older, I realized you were figuring out life just like I was, just a few years ahead of me. But then my grandparents are not figuring out life already. They lived life. They've done where I am right now 3 times already. So it's like, oh, they must know something. And that understanding alone is so important to me for my kids to be able to experience that through their grandparents and great grandparents, that they can see the greater picture, greater map of where they could end up and where they should go. And that's super important for me as a child with children, and that opportunity to have them interact with grandparents and great grandparents is that intergenerational connection as well.
So I want to ask Mommy a question. If you were giving advice to a new grandparent,
new meaning like the birth of the baby, or like new like the kid was 10 or 15?
It doesn't really matter. The point is
okay.
that you're entering into this stage now of being a grandparent. What's the most important thing that a grandparent needs to focus on to be an effective grandparent?
I don't know why the first word that jumped into my head is just enjoy the moments. Just now you get to enjoy. You don't have to worry. And you take out all the anxiety of raising children, and you can actually just enjoy it. Don't worry. The parents will worry. You can just enjoy. And I think that enjoyment and that joyfulness is something incredible that you can give to your grandchildren, that they are just, for being alive and for having a place in this earth, they lighten up your life. And I think that is what I would say. Enjoy them. Just enjoy them.
And Ahron, if you were speaking to your peers that have, youngish grandparents, you can call us old all you want, but youngish grandparents, those grandparents that are that still have a vitality in life, and they can still do things and be there with your family. What would you tell them is the most important thing for them to know so that they can maximize the relationship between between grandparent and grandchild?
So as you're speaking, I'm thinking that give them space. Don't worry so much. I know that it could be, in many different spheres, but we get nervous as parents that they're going to go to the grandparents. They're going to eat junk. Maybe we're worried they're going to watch too much TV. Maybe we're worried they're going to watch inappropriate TV or unfiltered, and that it's not going to be monitored, and whatever the fear may be of the parent. There's definitely fears there that we control in our homes and we can't control at our grandparents. give them space. Nothing's going to happen to your kid if he does X by your grandparents. Not nothing's going to happen, but the good, it's definitely weighs out. The good will weigh it out, because being able, I always remember with Tante Lori, we had a little baby then, she maybe 3 years old, and we'd go into the house and right away she would run to the licorice cabinet, to the double doors and then the drawer, and she would pick out something. And it always like irked me a little bit, like, this is what she does here? And like, yeah, because now she's 7 years old, and she remembers it as a fun place, as an enjoyable place to visit when we were in Baltimore. And that you don't realize that little bit of candy could be the key to opening up your child to this world of understanding and world of this relationship with them. So give them space to be able, give your parents and your grandparents space to be able to do that, and open it up and massage the relationship so that it could happen. And don't be afraid of communicating your concerns as well. But the main thing is give them space and appreciate that you have this opportunity.
Right. So I would throw in that, I could say it both to the grandparent and also to the parent, in different ways, but don't see each other as competition.
I think that's right. Meaning that's a great way to sum it up. But
what that tells the grandparent is that I shouldn't think that I need to compete.
Just enjoy. And then
that's right. I don't need to be. My child is not taking away from me. I'm not taking away from my child. And to a child also, they have to see their parent. If their child loves the grandparent, it doesn't take away or diminish. All it does is strengthen the love that the child has for the parent.
It just adds another instrument to their symphony. Right. And that's what it is. It's a beautiful, harmonious, everybody's playing a different instrument, and it's all to create this incredible human being that is going to have purpose in this world and give light and give beauty to this world and make Hashem proud. So we need to build that symphony. We need to build it with lots of instruments and whatever we got. And isn't it nice that it's not about money? It's so nice that it's not about money. It's about attention, and it's about, creating moments and creating special times with each other. So I think, that's an important thing.
I think one of the most important Nekudas said was creating memories. And that when you look at it, that this 3-minute interaction is going to create a memory. This little hug, or this little
this walk, or this planting a plant, or whatever you do.
The Shabbos meal.
Exactly.
Or this Shabbos walk, or this seeing Bubby and Zadie on the street.
Right.
And reacting to that. All of those are part of the memories that go in to help shape that child.
Right. I remember asking one of my kids, I used to read, I don't know, Ahron, if you remember, I used to read you books. We used to go to the library and pick out like 50 books at a time. The maximum amount of books that we could
remember get. Like that, the brain book or something? It was like the Great Brain, yeah.
You said you have a memory of that. That's pretty good. But I remember asking one of your brothers, do you remember all the books I used to read? Nope. I'm like, nope. Hours and hours at night I used to read with them, remember? Right. Piles of books. I'm like, no memory. And that's the difference between a child and a grandchild. Everything you do, every movement, every conversation is a memory. And I did give that advice to someone when they told me, Pesach is so hard, it's so hard. I said, you are not making Pesach. You're making memories. And she said, that was like one of the things that like changed her life. Like she said, oh, you're right. I'm not making Pesach. And then it changes your whole perspective. I'm making memories. And that's for your children, your grandchildren, right, your community, everybody around you. You're not just making Pesach. If you're making Pesach, it's hard. And it's overwhelming. If you're making memories, fun.
You might want to edit this out, but it's just, if you ask your children, what book did Daddy read them?
Yeah.
That they'll remember.
What book did you read them?
Well, I read
Oh, yeah.
Chicken Pot Pies. Because the one
book you read them.
That's
Yeah,
right.
the one book you read them. When I went to the hospital to have their brother or sister. Yeah, they remember that. The one meal you made them, the best meal of their lives.
Chicken Pot Pies.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mommy, for joining us. This was awesome, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this as much as I did, and both you here and both the listeners, because it's really awesome. It's an awesome opportunity for me to have, to be able to hang out with you guys and to be able to talk about things that I don't think everyone has the opportunity to explore like this. And I think people are missing as well, just because we don't have you're home alone, and we have this opportunity to be able to do this. So I hope you enjoyed, and remember, send us feedback if you like this, if you enjoyed this, at intentionaljew@gmail.com. Check out the website, subscribe to the newsletter, and remember, you rock.